Hi, welcome back. So we are moving on to the research short papers. We have 3 short papers for today, and each short paper will get 15 minutes. We want to start with the first one, the research short paper from Saleh and Saleh from KFUPM Business School, King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, Saudi Arabia, and Jaroslav is the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from Czech Republic. Saleh Alva Haishi. Yeah.
Yes, how are you, sir? Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. Please go ahead and present, Saleh.
Okay, I upload my my presentation. Is it okay?
Yes, sure.
I will share it. Okay. Actually, presenting after this keynote speaking is like teaching ABC after a Shakespeare poet. It's unfair to us. It's very nice and interesting.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to bring onto the full screen. We are able to see the presentation.
Sure, I will. Okay.
You have 15 minutes. Yeah, that's okay. You have 15 minutes to go. That includes the question and answer section also. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for giving me the time and the stage for my presentation. This is about biometric authentication security and overview. This is Saleh Al-Wahashi. Dr. Jaroslav is not here, but I'm representing him as well. So today we're going to go over quickly over the outline presentation of this quick presentation of biometric authentication security. We'll talk about authentication itself, the methods, the models. Then we'll talk about identification and enrollment, errors and tolerance, and we will conclude. So what's authentication is a process of confirming an individual's identity, either by verification or identification. So it could be like, for example, a person recognizing another person. It could be, for example, any access control by using a machine, mobile phone, ATM machine, for example. It could be a physical access control, like accessing a house, a building with a smart card or something. Or it could be an identification means like a passport or driving license. So when we talk about the different means of identification, we can talk about tokens, for example, which is hardware, or we can talk about the knowledge itself, like you have a password or a PIN, or we talk about biometrics, which is something that you are, okay, which is, it could be physiological characteristics like fingerprints and iris, or for example, hand geometry, or it could be a behavioral characteristics like way you sign, or the way you speak, the way you even wave your hand, for example, or any other behavioral sign of people. Now, where it comes from, it comes from biometrics. It comes from the Greek word bio, which is life, and metric means measure. So it's a way of measuring the statistical analysis of biological data, and in IT it refers to the technology that measures such human body characteristics for authentication purposes. So it's an automated recognition of individual based on their biological and behavioral characteristics, as we have said. So how it works? It works because every person is unique in terms of his behavioral, and in terms of his, they found that people are unique in some kind of aspects or characteristics. So we are going to distinguish the traits that makes each person unique from the other by measuring such traits, and how can we measure those traits, and how different is the measurement, or how different, how accurate we can distinguish between different people with different types of characteristics. Now we have verification and we have identification. Now verification, it's kind of a one-to-one comparison, which means that let's say that you have a smart card to access server room. So I can identify that you are the person by who is holding this smart card. While I can identify that, for example, this is Saleh and he's trying to access the server room. But is he eligible to enter the server room? That's the identification. So verify that this is Saleh, and then identify he has authority or eligible to, for example, access such data or such building or such premises, for example. Now, is this new? For example, is this because people think that biometric is kind for the last decades? The answer is no, because it's too old. It goes back to the 19th century, where people try to in France try to identify the criminals by their set of anthropometric measurements. So at that time, they used to have a record to, as you can see here in the figure, on the left side, where this is called the Petroleum system or the Bertillon system, I guess, as they say it in French. So, and it's named after the Alphonse Bertillon. And in the first place, the precise measurement of various attributes of the body is identified, and then after that they have to record all those measurements, as you see in the section B or on the right side of the image or in the figure, where the results were marked with on a card as shown here in B. So this is the first. We can say that this is the first biometric system that was existed. Before then, it was growth and evolution until we have reached today's systems. Now, what are the identifiers of biometric systems? Of course, it has to be universal. Universality is one of the key things or identifications of biometrics, which means that the target population should have such characteristics. You cannot ask people to give biometric authentication in such biometric that does not exist with everyone. Uniqueness, of course, it has to be unique for such people. Stability, it's not changing in terms of it could be measured every time anywhere with the same results. And it should be collectability, which means that you cannot ask people, for example, to plant a SIM, so you can't measure, for example, them as this biometric mean. Performance and acceptability, of course, that people should accept such kinds of biometric authentication, and its forge resistance. Otherwise, what's the point of having such kind of identification if it's easily to be forged? Now, of course, we have many types of technologies that you use for biometrics, like fingerprints, eye biometrics, face biometrics, hand geometry, signature, voice or speaking recognition, vein recognition, gait, body, air shape, DNA, and of course the keystroke dynamics. Now we can classify those into two main categories, which is physiological and behavioral. As you can see that, for example, face, fingerprints, hand, iris, and DNA, they could go for the physical attributes, while the behavioral could be like how you type, how you sign, for example, the inclination of the pen, how you press on it, your voice, and those are the behavioral ones. And we will see that the ones on the left, which is the physiological ones, are rarely changed within time, while the ones on the right side could be changed within time. For example, people, might change their signature style, might change the way they type, their voice might change while, for example, they are aging. So usually the ones on the left are most reliable ones or most widely used ones to identify people. However, all of them are being used in different places and in different systems as well. Now, what are the if you look at the model of the architecture of the biometric, we will go over this model, which looks at, like, first we collect the data and then we go for the signal processing. Of course, it depends on which device you are using. It's connected directly to the system or it's sent it remotely. Then we will match with a storage database the collected data. If it matched, then we will take a decision either to accept or to reject or to, for example, ask for further or extra data for authentication. Now, when we talk about the data collection subsystem, it's also called the data acquisition, and it comprises the input devices or the sensors, and where it converts the biometric information into suitable form to be processed by the remainder of the biometric system. Now, once we acquire or get the data from people, this will be sent, of course, through this data collection system to be or through the sensors, through the systems, through the signal system for feature extraction. Now, once it's received, of course, it will be processed, and if there is any kind of noise, for example, it will be extracted. If there is any kind of destruction, if it's not, for example, matching the correct standard format, it might be asked to be acquired or to get the biometric data again. So once it's filtered by removing the noise, then we can or the system will start to match it with the stored data before of the person's authorized people, let's say. So the key role here is this is the matching system, which is the main engine behind this the biometric system, where it receives the processed biometric and it starts to match it with the signal processed subsystem that acquired the data. Now, this will measure the similarity of the claimants or the people who claim that they are authorized with the sample reference that it's stored in the database. And of course, the results will be as it comes as a matching score, where the system will decide either to accept or to reject. Now, of course, there is a threshold because usually it's kind of a gray area here where we cannot have like a 0 and 1. So systems, they have this kind of threshold where according to this threshold, we can decide either to accept or to reject such authentication. Typically, it's a binary decision by yes or no and sometimes it might require the one to submit the same data again, up to 3, for example. Sometimes in passwords, the system might be tolerating to accept 3 times of, for example, re-entering the password if it's not corrected the first time. So what happens is we might end up with maintaining some errors when we match data with the one that's stored in the system. For example, yes, because I'm trying to just catch up with the time. So for the security enrollment, when we get the data, we might have possible decision outcomes that could be genuine individuals is accepted, which is that's the correct thing. Or it could be a genuine individual is rejected, which is an error, or an imposter is rejected, which is the correct thing, or an imposter is accepted, which is an error. So we call them type 1 error or type 2 errors, 2 types of error. What this is, type 1 is when the system is recognizing a valid user, which is system fails to recognize a valid user. So that's a type 1, which we call false non-match or false rejection. While the type 2, where the system accepts an imposter, a non-authorized person or individual, and we call it false match or false acceptance. Now, if we want to detail that one, we can say this is called the error tolerance threshold, where it's crucial and the application is dependent. For example, in type 2 errors, where the imposter is admitted that the tolerance is too large. Where the tolerance is small, this might cause the type 1 error where the legitimate user is rejected. So it's called EER, the equal error rate, where it means that the false non-match, the FRR, equal to the false match acceptance rate, which means that we are letting people, either they are letting people in while they are not authorized, or rejecting or stopping people from coming in while they are fully authorized, or they are in the system to be admitted or to be accepted. So we can see here that this is the type 2, and this is the biometric feature rejection, and with the tolerance threshold. Now, this is for type 2. Now for type 1, this is for type 1, and you can see that what was the threshold that accepted that we have to keep it, as we said here in the equation, it has to be equal between the two non-match and the false match or the false acceptance. So this is the aim of biometric systems, and from this diagram you can imagine that we have marginal error or a threshold where we can accept or reject. Now this later on will lead to our conclusion, which means that biometric systems need to be improved. Biometric systems still not. I mean, people are counting on them. People are still using them. But in any case, yes, I still have 1 minute, right?
Yeah, 1 moment. Yep.
Yes, yeah, I have a timer here. Okay, so I'm trying to closing here. So this will depend on choosing the best biometrics options that we have, and we have run some experimentals here on some of the systems to see that what is the acceptance rate and what is the rejection rates and how it's felt. And we can see that in all systems, of course, we have some kind of environment variables that will affect. For example, if it's a face recognition, it depends on the light, it depends on the indoors, outdoors. For fingerprinting, for example, it depends on the skin, if you are sweating, if you have some, for example, some things covering the hand and the iris, for example, it's an indoor environment or outdoor. The voice, it depends on the language, the equipment. So in conclusion, I can say that choosing the biometric system is something subjective, and it depends on many variables. And as a result, to overcome such problems, more than one biometric trait of a person can be used to achieve the stringent performance. Lastly, is biometric technology has a great potential, but of course, so far it needs to be improved, and people should work on more biological data rather than just the equipment itself. And it's an advanced field now in technology, and we will see maybe some kind of breakthrough technologies in the coming future in terms of in the field of biometrics. Thank you so much. Sorry for condensing everything together. I tried to utilize my time in the best way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Maybe 1 or 2 questions maximum. I'm just checking for any questions up there. Okay. Saleh, one question. Right here in India, we have Aadhaar for all the citizens. Right, every citizen of India is to enroll for Aadhaar. They have biometric, right? So what is happening is over the years, for lifespan of the person, people are facing some of the authentication challenges. How challenges can be addressed? Do you have done any research or in authentication failures?
Yes, as I told you, for example, now some experiments is going on about having this kind of SIM cards where it could be implanted in human bodies, and it could work as a biometric authentication for everything. No need for passports, no need for driver license, no need for IDs, no need for nothing. We will become like, you know, barcodes, like supermarket things. You just move in and out, and this will be scanned automatically. But this is kind of, you know, things looks like scientific fiction first, then it becomes reality.
Yeah. No, my question is more of physical features you gather for authentication. Over the years, it will change, right? Some of the features will change. So how to address such challenges?
You mean the changing features of individuals, right?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Here, artificial intelligence here will play a major role because artificial intelligence will be the key solution here.
Okay.
But of course, it will not. You know, there will be some gaps and glitches after all. But it's kind of a battleground where between this and that to narrow it down.
Thank you, Saleh, and thanks for your time and coming and presenting it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Have virtual applause for you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
So with that, we are moving on to the second paper, short paper. Yeah.
Okay. If for some reason I have to leave, is it okay, or because I was planning? Yeah, because I was planning that my session would be like an hour ago, but I'm sorry, I have some other commitment.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, and thank you for everyone.
Thank you. So second paper is from Mizoram University, Aizawl. We have Jayat Kumar and Vanal Mohan Shangi and Saumen Devnath. So you can bring, I think the name here, Jaya May. Arun? Jaya May is the thing.
Yeah, one second. I'm just trying to find their names. So I'm sorry, Jayat.
Jaya May.
Okay, one second. Okay, I got it.
I think you could raise your hand and we can bring onto the stage.
Okay, and who else, Sridhar?
Yeah. Vanla VANLAL. Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Hi. You have your colleague, everyone joined with you? Yeah.
No, sir. Hello, sir.
Okay. Please go ahead and present.
Can you hear me, sir?
Okay. We can hear you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. Can I change my connection? Okay. It was a little bit problem.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is okay. I think we can go lost connection. Yeah.
Oh,
please
hello.
Go ahead and present it. Yeah.
Okay.
It is clear now.
Okay, sir.
You see the icon to share screen?
What happened? Yes, sir.
Yeah, next to the
share screen.
Yeah, please
and
go.
Sir, can you see my slide?
Yeah, it's coming up.
Can I record using Chrome? Is it okay if you record?
Yeah, we are able to see it now.
I would like to record that. Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead and.
I would like to record the videos. Okay, sir. I would like to record the videos, sir. Is it okay?
No. Okay, we are recording this on from our side actually. So
yeah, we'll share with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
We have.
Is it visible, sir?
Try to complete.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Is it visible? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Today I'm going to present machine translation of English language to Mizo language. So here is my content. First is objectives, introduction, NMT system training, challenges of NMT on machine Mizo language, proposed method, result analysis, conclusion and future scope, and references. So our objective is analyze the blue score. Scan is to enhance the quality of the sequence NMT system output by tuning the parameters. The third is to check the fluency and adequacy rate of NMT system prediction output on the ground of blue score. So Mizo language is a language family of Sino-Tibetan that has a very few number of language speaker. It's around 83,846 native speaker as per 2011 census, which is mainly spoken in the northeastern part of India, such as Mizoram, Chin state of Burma, and in Chittagong Hill tracts of Bangladesh. Due to the nowadays information exchanging is more and more due to this information exchanging, there used to be language barrier between Mizo and others people, those who speak in others language. So machine translation is one of the approach to meet this challenge and to solve this limitation. So what is machine translation? Machine translation is the task of converting one language into another language by using the computer software. So for the very first time, the rule-based machine translation was developed in 1970s, which is also called as knowledge-driven approach. But the rule-based machine translation requires more human effort, since the preparations of the rules and linguistic resource involve morphological analyzer, path of speech tagger, syntactic parser, morphological generators, reordering the rules. So in order to meet this, in order to remove this limitation, 1990s statistical machine translation, which is also abbreviated as SMT, has come. But the advantage over this RBMT of SMT is better to cope with semantic. So training and translation efficiency. So require only sufficient amount of data. But this SNMT still have limitation. That is subject-verb agreement, reordering of the word. So after that, the neural machine translation came, which is a single integrated model. Compared to SMT, that is a statistical machine translation, NMT requires NMT is single integrated model, whereas the SNMT require language model and translation model. So the neural machine translation is one of the efforts which recently gained a remarkable enhancements in the matter of human judgment over the conventional approaches like phrase-based machine translation and statistical machine translation. But neural machine translation still have some issue, that is, since it is using the context length fixed length vector. Now it is suffer for dealing the long sentence. So this paper, Bandanu et al. And Sugrivar et al. 2014 proposed to cope with this issue. These are so in 2018, this paper Pathak et al. Has compared NMT and PBS NMT. This is the very first paper from a base of knowledge regarding this Mizo language. So in this paper, they have compared those NMT and PBSMT. So according to their result, blue prefer NMT prefer blue and PBSMT prefer human relation. So in this study, we have tried to enhance the existing NMT system introduced by this Klein et al. 2017 by tuning some parameter using English to Mizo language parallel language. Blue matrix for here we use blue matrix for automatic evaluation. The reason why we are trying to enhance this existing NMT system is that the previous paper, that is the first paper, they just use the default setting without tuning any parameters. So we are trying to enhance the ability of that NMT system by tuning the parameter. So this is
we have a couple of minutes to close. Please try to close in a couple of minutes. Yeah. Summarize.
Okay.
Yeah. You have a lot to go.
Okay.
Or,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll try to make it fast. Okay, sir. NMT system comprises of sequence to sequence, the LSTM encoder, decoder using attention mechanism for translation prediction. Encoder, in the encoder size, it has 2 layers of LSMT unit and 500 node in each layer. Now, so the encoding process is what of the given sentence is encoded, converted into its corresponding one-hot vector representation. Size of one-hot vector must equal to size of the source word. So the bit position set equal to 1 in one-hot vector is representative of index of word in dictionary. That means what the one represent if the bit is set to 1, it represents the one of the index of the word in dictionary. But the dictionary may contain large number of words, so size of one vector can be very large. So embedding is used to reduce the size of the vector and transform it into real vector. So finally, LSTM, that is long short-term memory, which is the one of the good features of the NMT. Network transform the embedded vector into a word vector, which is the representative of the original word. Original word means the source word. So this is the decoder side. But here in the diagram, we have shown only the encoding process and working of encoder for a given source sentence. I am a teacher for context vector 1 times 10 only. So in decoder, it has 2-layer LSTM decoder and 500 units in each layer, same as encoder. So it uses input feeding and global attention for translation predict. Here, instead of global attention, if we want, then we can use local attention also. Decoding process. As soon as we get the special statement E of S, that one is N. Vector AT, that is AT, is computed using source word vector, that is HS bar and current hidden state information. So attentional pay, the attentional score AT gives a measure of amount of attention to pay to corresponding source word vector.
We are not seeing your screen. Yeah,
okay.
You can share your screen and
sorry. Okay. Is it visible, sir? Maybe the camera professor. I'll try to fix.
No.
Okay. Is it visible, sir?
No.
Hello.
No.
My internet. Okay. I'll try to share. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
It's coming. Sir, is it coming?
No. One option is no, not coming actually. Yeah, it is coming now. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, sir. Okay, sir. Sorry.
Yeah, try to get into the actual work and the conclusion part. So like that is the most
sir.
important.
Okay, sorry, sir. Okay. Challenges of MT on Mizo language. One of the challenges is both the language, source language, that is English, and target language Mizo has totally different word order. Even though sometimes they follow the same order. Here, I have shown some few. Okay. English follows subject plus verb plus object, whereas Mizo follows subject plus verb object and object subject verb object subject. So because of this, it's very challenges for the machine to predict the most relevant information, or to preserve the meaning for the target language also, the source language also. So the language has ambiguous grammatical structures, so that is the ambiguity. English language follows strict sequence order, whereas the Mizo language does not do the same. So as we have shown in this, this one is clear, I think. So then this one is one of the main challenge. Second person pronoun, you have specific word for expressing singular.
Put the screen, full screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second person pronoun, you have a specific word for expressing singular. That is E. In Mizo, I is E. And plural, in. So for here, I just give one example to make some little bit clear. So what are you doing? This can have two interpretation in Mizo language. So this one is for singular, enge iti. Another one is plural, enge inti. So these are the challenges. So prefix and suffix. Here also we have investigated the prefix and suffix. So we have found some challenges also. There are 3 types of prefix in Mizo language, such as in, t, and inti. Sometimes t is also used as t depending on the sentence. So different types of suffix in Mizo language are as we can see, in Mizo language, when suffix are placed after the stem word, that is the
results. Can you move on to the results and outcome?
Okay, sir.
These are all challenges.
Oh, this is our proposed method. Okay, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, tokenization. Tokenization is done for it in the whole corpus, we can say the whole corpus are partitioned into three, that is training data, validation data, test data. After that, the pre-processing is done. During the pre-processing, the lowercase is applied to lowercase the data. So and during the training, we are tuning some parameter, that is training step and validation step, and learning rate is reduced to 0.5 to maximize the optimal learning of the model. So quality measurement of NMT. So bilingual evaluation under the blue is used for quality measurement. So it is string matching algorithm. It is computing using a couple of n-gram. Here we are taking up to 4 gram only. The score is ranged from 0 to 100 or 0 to 1 or 0 to 100 if it is evaluated as percentage. So here modified precision. Here in the modified precision, if we can see PN, we are taking the value n for 1. Since the value of n is more, the chances of getting 0 is very high. So we take only 1. So we take only 1. After that, brevity penalty is calculated. It is usually used for penalizing the short machine translation. It is one if the candidate translation C is the candidate translation, then R is the reference translation. If candidate translation length is greater than reference translation, or else we are calculating the downward exponents 1 minus R by C, like that. Then finally the blue is computed. That is the sum of BP into exponential. Here in the log we apply natural log E. Okay. Here are corpus description.
I think we have to move on.
Okay, sir. Let me just go to result. Okay.
Yeah, this is what we have.
This is our result. Here, the first one is that one is the left one. Okay, sir. This one is the result getting with the existing NMT. That is the base setting. So we try to enhance the existing one. So we have changed some parameter tuning. After that, we get this one. Now here I'll show you the result. Okay, sir. The difference here after getting now for BB means different test data. We are partition our corpus to different test data. So in the first one we get 5.05 improvement. Second one 0.61. The third one we don't get improvement for SS. That is short sentence. So long sentence we get 0.33. Here are some sample that predicted by the NMT system.
Okay.
So this is our conclusion, sir. The paper mostly focused on analyzing effective of NMT to improve the system prediction based on blue score. We have witnessed that the used NMT processes are less effective to cope with the long sentence due to complex syntax and structure. Our results show that the prediction of NMT system is good in terms of fluency but lack in accuracy sometimes. We improve the blue score on BB, AP, and LS test data over the base setup. As the blue score is concerned to exact word matching between the machine prediction and reference translation excluding the synonym words. So therefore, blue matrix underestimated the NMT prediction result. The good machine prediction would likely result in the better score, which is witnessed by the experiment result. In future work, we may be tested using other encoder-decoder model like transformer, CNN with explicit training parameter to obtain the quality of translation for the specific file language. Okay. These are my reference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions? So, any questions for Jaya? English to Mizoram translation. Just seeing if there are any questions. English to Mizoram. There is one question from Dr. Rajat.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Thanks for the nice presentation. You presented the challenges of MT in translation of English to Mizo and vice versa. In your view, would the challenges increase or reduce if you try MT between Mizo and other Indian languages or languages of neighborhood and neighboring states? Similar ones. Yeah.
Okay. Since the nature of Mizo language is very complex and very different from other languages, the challenge will be different, I think, depending on the language that we are trying to translate, sir.
Okay. Okay. So how much is the data size you use for this?
Here, sir, let me show. Okay.
12,000.
The collection of data is very tough, sir. We cannot collect more data. This is my MTech project as well, no, sir. During 1 year, we cannot collect that much data. Here, let me check it again, sir. Okay.
Okay, just I think we should move on.
Around 11,000, sir.
11,000. Yeah, I saw in your slide. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time and coming and testing this.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. So we are moving on to the next paper, and it is from 3 colleges. I can see actually CMR Institute of Technology, Bengaluru, and Sarvan Bhashya University from Kalaburgi, and Pragyan AI School. We have Satish, Vijayalakshmi Madam, and Rashmi and Shruti. So who is the presenter? Can you raise their hand and can you join the center stage? Please raise the hand, please. So that we will be on center stage. Dr. Raj, another 10 minutes, it's fine to move on to our tutorial. We are already 10 minutes delayed. Another 10 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Satish, there?
Yeah, I just handed over the mic to him. 1 second.
But let's try to cover this faster so that
we have the tutorial session lined up and it's already 10 minutes delayed. Yeah. What about Narun?
Yeah, Satish.
Yeah. You went on mute.
Satish, can you hear us? You're on stage now.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Satish. Thanks for accepting our paper and giving opportunity to present. So is my voice is audible?
Yes. Please go ahead and initiate the presentation. Try to complete within 10 minutes, please.
Yeah, so I just let me see whether my screen is visible. So hope my screen is visible. So is the screen is visible?
No, not yet. You didn't yet share it. Can you start presenting it?
Are you using Mac by any chance, Satish?
Yeah, I'm using Mac. Yeah, I'm using Mac.
Okay.
So is still is visible now?
No,
not yet. So I think that's a problem. So go to your Apple. Yeah, it's visible now.
It is visible now.
Now visible?
Yes, visible.
So
yep.
It
Please
looks.
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Satish. I am from Pragyan AI School. So my team is Vijayalakshmi, Vilash Kumar, Rashmi Uppin, and Shruti Patel. So the research topic is actually how to optimize the liver disease prediction using random forest, and apart from using the normal machine learning modeling methods, like we focus more on actually how to increase the accuracy using data balancing techniques. So means like we found that the data is imbalanced and we wanted to balance it actually. So why we selected this topic is actually like as we know that like around 10 lakhs patients every year in India get die due to of the liver disease, different kind of liver diseases. So and there were several papers were there. They were all done some kind of a liver disease analysis, but we selected the data sets which is very specific to India. So Indian liver disease patient data set actually, and it is hosted in UCI Edu. So like most of the data sets will be there UCI machine learning repository. So we also took from that. So this data set is from Andhra Pradesh, India actually, like, so this small data set, but we wanted to build a model specifically for Indians and wanted to check it actually. And the references what we looked at actually, like, so we looked at some kind of algorithms and some kind of how the different approaches they use to handle the imbalanced data set actually. So some of the algorithms like the paper 8, like using something like a smart or like smart burst actually. So and the maximum performance what they have is actually around 89.47% for Indian data set. So using KNN classifications. So we try to achieve 100% actually. So that is what we trying to present. And so the data set has 10 features like the basic things like age, gender, and alkaline and total protein algorithms. These are the general, and the total number of data set is 589. So patient information. In that 169 is non-disease and remaining is the disease. Like so disease and non-disease, like if you see this figure itself, like you see that like data is imbalanced actually. So that was the one thing we initially observed, but like as the approach for ML model, same thing, like we build the model and classification, and then we split the data into test and training. So we build using the training data set, and when we tested with the testing data set actually. So this is the approach we use. And the novelty, what I can say is like just like a normal machine learning model. So the things which we observed here is actually there are two cases we observed. So whether we need to find out a data outlier data before a transformation, because we found the data set is something like a skewed data set. So or like after we do outlier trimming, then we do the transformations. Like, but what we got good result is actually like we trim the outlier data set first, and then we did the data transformation. This is one observations what we have. And then the second thing is the balancing data set actually. Like so other steps are same. So like dimensional reduction and modeling and everything is same. So another observation we have here is actually whether we need to do a feature selection before balancing data or like after balancing data actually. Like, but what is the best options we got is actually like first we should be doing the balancing of a data, then we will be doing the feature selections, because that is what we felt is a good option. So that is one observations what we have. And then also like we did another kind of observations, like whether balancing data set is essential or not essential. Like we tried all kind of combinations to optimize the model using hyperparameter, grid regressions, dimension reduction, feature selection, everything without using the imbalanced data, balancing a data set, but we are not able to achieve beyond 94% actually. So beyond certain point, like so then we thought that like the balancing data set is very much essential. These are our key novelty in this one actually. And to give some introduction about the algorithm, like we use the random forest algorithm. So it is a deviation from the means like it's an enhanced version of the decision tree. Actually in random forest, like we have so many decision trees, and then finally majority voting will be considered, and so this is the random forest algorithm we use. And when I was saying about the imbalanced data set and the balanced data set, so since like so this is this kind of data set actually, like something is, some class is very number of representation of some classes is very low and some classes is very high. Either it is something called minority or majority. Under sampling is actually like we will be reducing it actually, so making the majority is equal to same as the lower like minimum class size actually. Like oversampling is actually we will be enhancing it actually. So here we will be doing synthetic data generation. So we will be enhancing, we will be generating new data, and so to make both the classes are well balanced actually. So these are the two approaches, and that is what I told her. Like so, we will be doing synthetic. If it is we use the KNN kind of things. So this is the shortest distance, and these are the green things are just created actually, synthetic data created. So this is the original data. If it is the original data, so and if you use the KNN kind of oversampling method using KNN algorithm kind of thing, so it will generate a synthetic data. So many things. So then finally, the data set will be something like this actually. So using this data set, we'll be trying to build actually. So this is about the core concepts. And to evaluate, like since like it is a healthcare kind of things, like we are not only relying on the accuracy, we have to do recall, precision, FN score, ROC, and UC curve, because we are optimizing for almost all matrices available for classification. These are the matrices for classification, and this is classification whether we have a disease or not a disease. So these are the matrices what we use. Like this is a confusion matrix, and from confusion matrix we can derive precision, recall. We can also derive accuracy, FN score, and ROC curve. Actually, this is since like this is a medical thing, because we don't want to rely on completely on the accuracy. So this is the recall, precision curve, and ROC curve actually. And the development environment what we used is actually like same Anaconda and ML library sklearn, and we used visualization, Matplotlib, Seaborn, and Plotly we used, and system what we used normal laptop. So since data set is very small, so we use normal laptop. If the data set is very big, then we have to use the cloud or maybe GPU, TPU, something like. So in this case, like we use normal thing. So the approach actually, like we use a standard machine learning model. So like we started with the cleaning of the data and finding out the missing data, and then we are trying to do some kind of univariate, multivariate kind of analysis, and then in univariate analysis we try to find out what kind of distribution is there, any they deviated from normal distribution, and is there any skewness or using a quotasis, and then we are trying to find out is there any outlier presence in the data. So this is the things we did actually. Like we found there is a the skewness, like so that like let me show. So we found some kind of outlier, we found some kind of a skewness actually. This diagram shows actually like, so how far from this actually, this shows actually there is a presence of outlier. So this diagram shows actually like from this is the maximum, so this outlier. So we found the outlier, we found the skew not deviated normal distributions. And then we did correlation matrix to understand is there any correlation, because why we need to find out actually if these two data features are highly correlated, then there is no point of having another one. So we found actually there is some correlation exists actually. So because of this reason, like we did something like a feature selections, like which are the important features which is useful actually, because if you reduce the number of features, then your model will be more optimized, because the competitions what it needs is less actually. So we use a feature selection because of that. This is the of the features which are important. So this is what we did the initial kind of analysis, and then while building it actually we started like a step-by-step process, like so we did with the basic kind of things like replacing and missing value and all those things, because we don't need to do encoding and all those things because all are numerical things. So the basic accuracy what 67%. Outlier detection, like we used the turkey fence, but like we modified it actually, like we not use the exactly same turkey thing. So if you look this, if you look this one actually, like we use interquartile range, not 75 to 25 actually, like we use interquartile 85 to 75%, and then we use 2x. Like actually turkey fence is actually 1.5 times of the interquartile range. So we changed that actually, and then we found that is optimal value. Like we used various values and then found out that is the optimal thing. And then with that also, like we got only 72%. Like when we do the feature selection, we got this. And then when we do all the data transformation, feature selection, grid search, like hyperparameter tuning, and even the dimension reduction using PCA, so maximum we are able to get it actually, the 76%. Then when we started thinking about actually how exactly we should be doing the optimization, so that was the reason like we explored more about different kind of imbalance data handling. So these are the undersampling techniques. Like so we use like around 20 are there, but I'm only highlighted so 10 undersampling tech.
Satish, please try to summarize.
So we started with like 75%. Yeah. So I'm end only. So around from started with 75, we reached around 1% for 4 of the algorithm, and in oversampling, like maximum we can achieve is 74. So what was our observation is actually like so features, like I already told, feature selection has to be done before we do the optimization. That is one, and another is like data transformation has to be done before outlier after that data transformation. So this is our graphs actually, like model 1 graph, model 2 graph. So then this is a final optimized model. So this you see that like the data set is balanced actually, like both are same. So that is then we see that like precision, recall, and F1 score, everything is like 100%. So that is what we saw here in the confusion matrix. So if you see here also like ROC curve, like so this is line, so 100%. Like if you see that like ROC curve also, like the area is around 100%. So this is what we found, and these are the undersampling methods which gives a better result. So just like overview, so I think I already explained. So if this is something like this, like near miss does something like this actually, and other one is neighborhood cleaning. So this green thing it will remove. So just like we explored more about those things, and the evaluation metrics I already told. So then the conclusion is actually like the essential things like outlier trimming that I told, undersampling we covered, and since like health comment, like we optimized across all those things. And the future scope is actually like if you wanted to do like we have not done dimension reductions actually because we got already 100%. But we can think about, but if it is more features, but in this case not necessary. But like if you got another data set which is having that, because we are trying to run this model with multiple different data sets and see that like whether this works actually. And also like we are trying to do some kind of like reducing number of features, like because what happens actually like in smartphone or smart wearable watch, like we get some basic parameters. So using those basic parameters, how many different diseases we can predict. So that is another thing, because we did for this same thing for heart disease prediction, and we optimized with the what are the basic parameters what we can get either orally from the smartwatch, then heart diseases. Like so same thing we are trying to do with the liver, like that is the future work. So with the basic parameters what we can get from the oral and the smart wear watch, whether we can you can use this model to predict whether the liver diseases are some discrepancy early detection. So that is all about future work. So so I'm done actually. Any questions?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Satish. Great work.
Thank you.
Multiple models you used and evolved to this level. Thank you very much. So any questions?
We have to start off the next thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Satish. We are going to start the next session. Tutorial. Yeah.
Okay, then
we are closing this
sharing. So thank you for your time.
So can you, Sridhar, can you introduce Professor Louis-Philippe Morency and start the session also? I will join at the Q&A.
Okay. Arun, we are closing this session and opening the other one, or?
Yeah, we can do that, or else we can continue with this itself. So either way, it's fine.
Yeah. You can bring here.
So sorry, whom should I bring?
Sorry. Yeah, now we have tutorial session. Dr. Louis-Philippe Morency.
Okay. So can I turn his video on? Like, I don't see him in the attendees.
So you don't see him here.
No, one second, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Sorry for the delay. I think we are starting a bit late your session, Dr. Louis-Philippe Morency. So let us introduce. So Dr. Louis Morency is a French-Canadian researcher interested in human communication and machine learning applied to better understanding of human behavior. today we are having his tutorial session, and Dr. Morency is a currently assistant professor at the Language Technologies at Institute of Carnegie Mellon University. And welcome, sir, and please take the stage.
My name is Louis-Philippe Morency, but people call me LP. It's a great pleasure to talk with you and share some of my passion in multimodal AI. This is a topic I've worked on for many years. In this tutorial, I will try to share some of the main concept in this field. Anybody or any professor talking in front of an audience really often share the work that is possible because of a team of students. This is my Multicom group at CMU Carnegie Mellon University. Our group study multimodal AI, but also two very interesting topics. One is around mental health, how multimodal AI can help perceiving behavior markers of depression and PTSD and others, and also analyzing communication in general. The goal today is to focus on multimodal AI, and it's a little bit about telling you of some of our recent results, but primarily giving you a tutorial and giving you some of the main concept of multimodal AI. Multimodal AI is really becoming part of our everyday. This is people are using their mobile phone, which has multiple modalities like speaking to the phone, the video camera, but also modalities like physiological sensors, heart rate, or GPS, wearable sensors also as well, with augmented reality, ubiquitous computing, where the environment in your house also could have knowledge of the activities and the interaction that goes with it. And then robots and virtual humans, which are slowly these assistants that are slowly being built and integrated in our life. And since over the last maybe more than half a year, a lot of us have lived in this world of video conferencing. Video conferencing for researchers like me on multimodal, it is a good thing in a sense. Video conferencing is great because it has a camera, there's a microphone. Everybody has their own camera and microphone. A lot of the challenges you have in instrumenting interaction has been solved. So it brings an interesting challenge on the modeling and the AI part. I will focus, and that's a focus in my research, but also in this tutorial, about how can we build AI systems that understand human when they're communicating either face-to-face in video conference. And how we do that is usually through the 3 V of communication: verbal, vocal, and visual. Verbal is what you say. It's the words you use, is a choice of words you use. There's the syntax as well, when you decide to put these words together into sentences. And also there's the pragmatic, or the intent behind these words, that is related also to the meaning of these words. And so this is the idea of one modality, the language modality, what you say, and then there's also how you say things, because you can decide to emphasize something. You can, and there's the aspect of prosody is this change in the acoustic that is happening during vocalization, but specifically during one type of vocalization, which is during the time where you're speaking words. So these words will have different intonation, emphasis on certain word, and also voice quality, like the tenseness of the voice or the breathiness of the voice. Then there is the other aspect of vocal, which is vocal changes when there's no spoken words. These are called vocal expression, like a laughter or lone moan or a pause fillers when you're hesitating. And then there is the third V, which is visual. The visual are your gesture. It could be a beat gesture when you emphasize things. You can have iconic gestures. It was large like this, metaphorical. And also, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and that would be an eye gaze plus facial expression. There's the body language, how close I am from someone, my posture, as well as the proxemics, which is also how the distance to someone else, to an object. When I analyze behaviors, I often one of the first thing I look at is eye gaze. Very important for eye contact, for communication, but also very important to also look at cognitive load when you're thinking. The eye contact and eye gaze and eye gesture, very important. And facial expression. There's what's called the basic facial expression, happy, sad, surprised. There's about 6 of them that have been identified with the hypothesis and the observation that these are general across cultures. That was why they were tagged as basic. But there's also other facial expression like confusion that are also very interesting. So the 3V of communication, and the reason now is a good time to do multimodal AI is that there's been a lot of progress over the past years to study these multimodal behaviors, and also there's been great progress on the analysis, what could be seen as the sensing of these modalities, different verbal, vocal, and visual. On the visual side, which I show here, there's been great improvement on facial expression recognition. On the audio, there's been a lot of work on prosody, and on a language, speech recognition, and also a natural language processing has given us a lot of improvement. So one example for the visual, if you're interested, we have the Open Face Toolkit to help for facial expression analysis. So now that we have all of these different technology, and these technologies are for perceiving verbal, visual, and vocal, then it becomes an interesting research problem. How do you integrate that information? I want to integrate what people say, how they say it, and their gestures. And I want to integrate it maybe to study people's emotion, to look at the sentiment, an opinion, or sentiment of an opinion, to see how persuasive someone is, or maybe if it's about learning and education, maybe to look at frustration, which can happen when you are trying to learn a new concept. Or you can look at social interaction. In that case, social interaction could be about looking at what is a good leader, also someone who shows empathy, a doctor showing empathy, or a tutor or a teacher. And engagement, how to keep your audience engaged. And then I'm very interested in mental health, so maybe these technology could help us be able to analyze the behavior, multimodal behavior, to be able to look at symptoms of mental health disorder like depression, distress, or autism as examples. So there's a lot of interest in multimodal AI, and what's interesting is that there's been over the years a lot of progress, specifically in the last 5 or 10 years. And so what I will do today is try to share some of the high level on multimodal AI, and also share some example of the technical problem in this field. In 1 hour, I can't give you all the information I would like to give. If you like this and you're passionate about it and you want to learn more, in fact, there is a complete course on this, which this year we made completely online, both publicly online also. And so if you want to look and find out more about this course, you're welcome to look at this, all the lectures. It's 15 weeks of lectures, more than 30 hours, 40 hours of on the topic of multimodal machine learning. But today, what I will do is go ahead and give you and spend a big part of the day, of the hour, like explaining the core technical challenges at a high level. I don't have the time to go in depth in all of them, but at least so that you understand when I'm integrating, when I'm building these AI systems that are understanding human and understanding from different modalities, and these modalities are heterogeneous. When I bring these together, there are technical challenges in doing that, and that's what I want to emphasize here. And there are 5 of them that we, in our research, realize and identify. They're not the only one, but there are definitely 5 important ones. And then I will spend in a later part of the tutorial some time looking at the 2 of them, multimodal representation and alignment, and giving you some examples of the main concept in these. So, but yeah, core technical challenges in multimodal AI. If you have problem falling asleep tonight, it's a big conference, you had so many things, maybe you need something to make you fall asleep. There's this wonderful paper on multimodal machine learning. It's a survey and taxonomy on the topic of multimodal. That also is related to the course. It identifies 5 core challenges that I want to bring. The first 2 core challenges is called representation and alignment. Representation, the challenge of representation is that if I say I like it, or I have a happy face or a joyful tone, these should be understood by the computer in a very similar fashion. If I am a tense voice, or tense facial expression, or wow, surprise, they should be understood by a computer. And computers, what do they understand? Computers understand numbers, and they understand vectors, and they understand bits. So when I use the term representation, I'm saying, what is the one vector that can represent what I say, how I say it, and the facial expression? And this one vector in such a way that this vector is a good meaning of what I said, or the good intent of what I said. And so that's the challenge of multimodal, and that's one of the challenges, is that if I have any video of me, and that's the visual, and then the verbal, I want to learn that one vector. That's what I represent here. That where both what I say and the facial expression are bring together, and what is complementary to each other, on the fact that I was both smiling and saying something joyful, that has been integrated together, and that's what the multimodal representation will do. There's some early work on this back in 2011, and there's one of these papers that was a big aha moment for me, and I was like, oh, there is something there in 2011. The exact one I'm presenting is the 2012 paper. And that one, what they did is that they took not just videos of people, but they took images, a little bit simpler in a sense. They took a bunch of images, and for each images, they had associated words with it that described that. So you have this pair of data. You have maybe a car and the word car. You had maybe a man and then the word man, or you can have an older man and an older man, the word, so the image and the words. And so you have kind of image and captions. And what's really interesting here is that they put these image and the text and force them into the computer in the AI system, and learn to represent and to bring these image and the language together in one vector. So what it means in one vector is I can take now any image and I can encode it in that one vector, and I can take any words and encode it in that one vector. But that one vector is living in a space which is, in fact, that space is a joint space where both images and language are living together. So a happy face and the word I love it will both be close to each other in that space. And what they did is they trained that algorithm, and then they tried some new images, and then they tried to do something very cool, which is algorithmic. What they did is they took an image of a blue car, okay? And that's here. They take an image of a blue car, and they encode it into a vector. And then they take the word blue, and they encode it into a vector. They take the word red and encode it into a vector. And then they do arithmetic. The image of a blue car minus the word blue plus red. And then they get a new vector. And then they look at nearest neighbor of other images that have the same. And then what do they find? Images of red cars. Minus blue plus yellow, image of blue car. A bus minus yellow plus red, and then red, which could be bus or red fire truck, and then the same, and then they tried day and night. This was a revelation for me, because suddenly I have this way of taking something that's relatively heterogeneous, very different, and image is quite different from words. And then I'm suddenly able to encode them, not just encode them in vector separate ones, but to encode them into vectors that are related to each other, so related that I can do arithmetic with them. And so this is an example of a joint representation where I managed to learn to represent, to encode language and two modalities in a space. And that's a very interesting technical challenge, which is how do I learn and train and understand those joint representation? But you may not always want to have joint representation. And that's an interesting other challenge in multimodal, is that sometimes you may want to learn representation in each modality. Like you want to encode image and language separately, but you want to coordinate. It's not that you want them to live exactly in the same, that you want to be exactly, no, they're going to be separate, but you're going to find a way to coordinate so that, because, and the reason why you may want them first separate is that language may have a lot of subtlety to it, that about the way phrases are like grammar is used, and that may or may not be relevant to an image. And similarly in the image, maybe there's something about the texture of an object that is very hard to find a link with it in language. So there's things that are better representation in the vision world. There's things that are better represented in the visual, in the language world, but there's things that should be coordinated, like happy is a concept that could go in both. Positive, negative is a concept that could happen in both. And so that's the idea of coordinated. So that's the first technical challenge in multimodal. the second technical challenge, which is, if you ask me what really makes multimodal very different from other fields, is that it's also the challenge of alignment, of synchronization between modality. Because in many cases, you have one modality, that the words that has been spoken, and then you have another modality, like different object in the image, and then you're trying to connect the two, but it's hard, because which word is connected with which objects in the image is not clear. And that problem of connection, of alignment, of synchronizing the modality, like I'm talking right now, but my gesture could come after or before. Sometimes I'm lucky and they are really, really, really synchronized, but sometimes there may be just asynchronous in this. And so I want to be able to do this, and I may want to do this, like, for example, I may see many videos, let me show here example, many videos of the person doing the same action, but they're different. I mean, they're similar, they're related, but they're not exact. And that's a problem with alignment, is you're rarely going to find exactly the same entity in both modalities, but you will find some that connects more than others. And that's a little bit the same thing with these videos, is like they're not exactly the same activities, but there's definitely frames that connects with others. In a more multimodal world, it's the idea that if you have an image and then you have words that relates to it, there are some words that relate to some aspect of the image, some part of the image. So this is the dog, this is the tennis ball, this is related. Swimming is more like holistic over the eldest, and the murky water is just the part around. And so you want to make it so that the alignment, the synchronization, the algorithm, if I want to do good multimodal, I will need not only to be able to encode my modality, that's representation learning, but I also will need to be able to connect entities or data point from each modalities, so that the objects, so the AI knows that what part of vision is connected to what part of language. And so these are two very important challenges in multimodal. They are called representation and their alignment. And then when these are probably true for almost all multimodal problem. And then it branches to like translation and fusion. And so in the translation problem, I take one modality and I translate to another modality. An example, speech recognition. Speech recognition, I go from acoustic signal to language. Another example is the image captioning. I take an image and I translate to, and this is related to the translation that most people will know about machine translation, or when you're translating from French to English, for example. It is relevant. In fact, some of the approaches that works for machine translation will also work for doing the translation from an image to text. One of the big challenge in translation is doing the translation, but a big, as big challenge is also evaluating. How do I know that I got a good translation, that my translation, and that's true also when we were doing machine translation. How do I know that the translation is correct for French to English is always a good. So that's the problem of translation. Another problem is fusion. There, I'm not going from one modality to another. There, what I do is I take both modalities and I want to fuse them in such a way that I get something else out of it. Something else will be a higher level description or construct that represent these two. So for example, you listening to me, you hear what I said, you see what I said, what I do, and then you integrate it to find out the emotion or the intent or something, some higher level that's not just a translation, it's really something new or something that I inferred from it. So that's translation and fusion. Let me give you some more example on translation. Hopefully the audio will work for this. This example here is the idea that I'm moving from a video, so that I take a video. But in fact, I'm not going to take the video completely. I will only take the transcription of what has been said in that movie and how it has been said. So just the audio track in a sense. And then I will translate, but I'm translate into the opposite. The other is I'm going to create the visual. And the other example of this is you listening to me and just closing your eyes and just imagining my gestures to it. So that's the example of this. And this is great work done by Saleh a little while ago, but it gives a good example.
You snotty little bastard.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
I'd like an answer to the question, Judge.
The court will wait for an answer.
If Lieutenant Kendrick gave an order that Santiago wasn't to be touched, then why did he have to be transferred? Colonel, Lieutenant Kendrick ordered the code red, didn't he? Because that's what you told Lieutenant Kendrick to do.
Object!
And when it went bad, you cut these guys loose!
Your Honor!
You had Marcus inside a phony transport!
Your Honor!
You doctored the logbook!
Damn it, Captain!
You coerced the doctor!
Consider yourself in contempt!
Colonel Jessup, did you order the code red?
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
I really like this movie. But what was really interesting there is that there were two types of translation. One translation was going from the speech, what has been said, to gesturing that same person who is currently speaking. We call them speaking gestures. But in the second part that was in some part of this video, is in fact really interesting because it was also listening gestures. It's not only what I say in my gesture, it was going what someone says and then the gesture of the listener who is listening to that. That I think is a double translation. One we would call it cross-modal translation, and the second one is cross-modal and also interpersonal translation almost. So this is the challenge of translation, the idea of going from one modality to another. There's been a lot of approaches over the years. Some of them were more like example-based, kind of a non-parametric, where you look at nearest neighbors, and that gives you a translation. And now more and more these days, we look at parametric model, what we call also model-driven, where we're not just looking at example like nearest neighbor, non-parametric, but looking at parametric and trying to find this model that will help generalization. I want to give you another example of translation where in this case I'm translating from language to motion. So in the sense that I want to instruct maybe an avatar or an agent or a robot. I want to tell the robot what to do. What should the robot do? And that example here will be like a person jog a few steps, a person step forward, then turns around and step forward again, and a kneeling person raise their arm on the side and stand up. These are all were created just as an input, the language, and the output, the translation, is the gesture. And then there is the problem of fusion. Fusion is this concept that I'm not only going from one modality to another, but I'm bringing together many modalities and information from many modalities with the goal of inferring something else, like kind of higher level understanding of what is happening. And then what's interesting is I want to take care of what's complementary. What is it that happens in both modality, and also supplementary, like what is it that is not happening in one. So supplementary means the same thing happening in both, but complementary will be like something that helps it, that's different from each other. And so fusion, there's been different approaches. Back in the days, there were only two approaches for fusion: early fusion and late fusion. Either you concatenate all the modalities up front, use the classifier, or go ahead and learn from each classifier, each independently modality, and then only at the end with a simple fusion mechanism, then get the fusion. Now these days, people are doing more model-based or intermediate approaches. So there's deep neural approaches, which is a lot of what I will talk today, and I've shown a few examples. But there's also kernel-based and graphical models also to do model-based. The last one is the one that has been studied the least, but very interesting, is the idea of transferring knowledge during the learning, during the training, transferring knowledge from one modality to another. So what it is that at training time, I have a task, like I want to recognize visual object, and I want to recognize visual objects, but all of my training data are for a certain type of visual object, but I know at test time I will need to be able to generalize to new types of object that was never in my training. So what do I do? It's hard. And so, but what I could do is say, hey, let me look at language, and let me look at how these objects that you had in your training, how do they relate to each other? And maybe how do they relate to a lot of other words that you didn't have in your training, but although they are not there in your training, because I know something about language, there's a lot of interesting resources in language, like WordNet, that tells you like a man, a woman, a both person, a person, and so you have a kind of a hierarchy of concept. You can use that kind of knowledge to improve your visual representation. To give you another example is that I can say, hey, language, when I speak, they co-occur often with some visual facial expression. So maybe at test time, I will not have visual. I will have no visual. But at training, I do have it. So what could I do is I say, hey, let me look at a way to encode my language, which is really what I'm interested in, because at test time, I will not have vision. Let me try to find a way to encode it in such a way. I want to encode it so that it encode really well what was also happening, co-occurring at the same time with the facial expression. Today was a great day, and the video of the person saying it. The challenge here is that you want to do this, but if you just do it like this, what the model is probably going to learn, it will learn an intermediate representation, an encoding of language that is really helpful to predict or generate the visual expression. But it may have forgotten some of the original meaning of the words. And so for that, what we do is called a cyclic loss. A cyclic loss is interesting because it goes ahead and then it says, okay, learn something to generate this, but whatever you generated should still be able to generate the original data. And if you do this and you train it this way with this kind of paired data means that you have data which is both co-occurring at the same time. And then at test time, then I forget I don't have any of these, and then I can use it for another task like sentiment. And that gives really, really good performance in our present. So these are the 5 technical challenges that I wanted to share with you. There's been a taxonomy, and that's what the paper share about the different type of these objects. But the main idea is that almost all problem in multimodal requires a way to represent the information. Also, you need to synchronize what some people call grounding. When the language is one of the modality, people call this grounding. But also synchronize, connect the modalities. That's the alignment. And then depending on what you're doing, either you're doing a translation or fusion. And then there's also the problem, interesting problem of like, how can I bring something, knowledge from one modality within the other? And these are applicable to many different tasks. And so affect, I kind of use this example quite often today, but it is also really important for media description or image captioning or captioning what is happening in this video, and some extension of that that is called visual question answering, where you can start asking the AI system about what is happening in the movie right now. Recognizing and also retrieval in the videos, recognizing events, recognizing a wedding, recognizing someone cooking. These are examples of application. So in the next part of the tutorial, what I will do is go in one of those challenges, which is the multimodal representation, and go a little bit more in depth, give you a few examples of the kind of AI that has been developed in this, and to give you the high level of this. So I told you, one representation, one type of representation is a representation where you learn a joint space, a place where the image of a red car and the description of that red car all live together. It's a one vector space where both are living. And this vector space, when I learn it, I can use it for tasks. I can recognize task like a recognizing object, or if I end up learning this in the case of joint representation, in the case of me talking right now, I get the text of what I'm saying and the image of my expression, and then I learn a joint representation that integrates what I said and my expression, and then I can use that to do a classification task. That could be a simple sentiment analysis or other task that you get from that. But this is called joint representation. But this simple joint, and that's a relatively simple joint representation. But this joint representation may not be explicitly modeling all different ways this text and vision and text work together. And for that, this like very simple, because this is like very simple where you concatenate each, and I'm bringing it, this was 2 modalities, but what if it has 3 modalities? The simple way is to concatenate all 3 of them and learn a joint representation. But let's study multimodal in a little bit more details and look at it for emotion, but specifically for sentiment. Sentiment means positive opinion or negative opinion. And let's look at behaviors when I express this sentiment. Let's look at example of what's called unimodal behaviors. Unimodal means they're behaviors coming from only one modality. So if I say this movie is sick, is it positive or negative? Maybe a little bit ambiguous. Probably a little bit positive, but it's ambiguous. This movie is fair. This movie is fair is probably neutral or slightly a little bit positive. If I smile, I'm probably positive a little bit more. If I'm loud, I can be loud, very happy, and loud, very like disappointed. So loud is disambiguous. So sometimes unimodal cue gives me information, and sometimes unimodal cue are ambiguous. But then there's like bimodal cues. Bimodal cues mean 2 events, 2 unimodal events co-occurring, or at least linked together. And so this movie is sick and I smile. This is quite positive. This movie is sick and I frown. Now it's probably negative. It's the same language, but because I put the positive, I put the negative expression, then that gives me suddenly a disambiguation. But this movie is sick and I'm loud. Hey, I can scream it, it doesn't change. Like it's movie is sick is still quite ambiguous. But then there's like trimodal. Trimodal is interesting. So it's unimodal cues that are linked together, either co-occurring. And so this movie is sick, I smile and it's loud. This movie is sick, allowed, then it's probably very positive. But now if I say this movie is fair, I smile and I loud, it's just a little bit positive. And what's happening here is one of the two modality, language, ended up taking over because this movie is fair. Even if I'm loud, there are fireworks in the background, it doesn't change the fact that I said something that is not super positive. It cannot be, this movie in fair cannot be seen as super positive. And what I just described to you is called a nonlinear effect, nonlinear phenomena. What it means is multimodal is not just simply linearly adding evidence from each modality. If it was the case, my job would be so simple. But now you see that sometimes there's a nonlinearity where one modality just takes over the others. That's one example of nonlinearity. And for that, if I jointly put everything in one, I may not be able to easily see all of these different interactions of unimodal, bimodal, and trimodal. And this is why it was interesting that one representation that was proposed was called Multimodal Tensor Fusion Network. Multimodal Tensor Fusion Network is the idea that I will not jointly, but it's a joint representation, but I will not do it simply. What I will do is I will do what's called a bilinear representation, where I take one modality and the other, and I do this cross product, and then I add the one to each of them. And what it does, it creates this very interesting new matrix, where in one part of it, I have my unimodal. This is the same as this. It's just this is mathematic and this is visual. So I take hx, this is what is here, and I take hy, this is what is here. I take these two together and I do the cross product, that also called bilinear model cross product. And then what I get, if I just did it by itself and without the one, I will just get this middle thing, the bilinear. What it means is I have for each of these dimension of hx, that's what I have here. And for each of these dimension of hy, that's what I have on the vertical, I get the interaction term. And so this term here is the interaction of the second here with the third here. And so that's the interaction, is like how well this dimension relates with this one. And so if these were like interpretable dimension, like how is the plurality of the language, how is the gender of the language, and how in the visual, how is the facial expression, the smile, and how is the gaze. This is what it was interpretable, and these elements are like how these interaction term between them. But in the same matrix, I have these interaction term, but as I saw, sometimes there's unimodal terms that are really important. So I put them here. And then this next neural network, what it will do is look at all of these and say which one are important for my task. And my task can be like sentiment. And sentiment will pick some unimodal cues, some bimodal, and if it's 3 modalities, then it can also, and the student who created that was had a lot of fun, because it now has trimodal. You have the bimodal, the unimodal, the bimodal, and the trimodal all in the same cube. This is called a tensor. So a 3D matrix is tensor. This is why it's called multimodal tensor fusion. It could have been called multimodal 3D matrix or ND matrix, but tensor is another word for that. And what's really nice is it outperformed previous work because it takes unimodal, bimodal, and trimodal. And also integrating these is better than the earlier version of early fusion. And it is also better than just doing only unimodal, only bimodal, or only trimodal. when learning these joint representation, there's also the idea of learning by translating. That's interesting. So what this is I want to learn a representation between text and images, and I'm not going to learn that joint representation because I have another task like emotion, but I could also learn my representation by translating. So by translating image to text, or like in the example of co-learning, translating language to expression, facial expression. This is one way that's called learning representation by translating, or I call it encoder decoder, but that's a way to encode to that middle representation or intermediate representation in such a way that I can generate afterward my other modality. So that's another example of learning representations. And let me show you one more way, which is called autoencoder. Autoencoder, the basic autoencoder, will be just in one modality. The idea is I think the best idea, the best way to represent the intuition of autoencoder is a hourglass. And the idea is I will take one observation, let's say a sentence, a very maybe long sentence, and I'm gonna encode it into something very small, like maybe 10-dimensional vector, in such a way that that 10-dimensional vector is still able to recreate this very long sentence. So that's called an autoencoder because it's encode and decode itself, auto. And so that's a typical autoencoder. Now you can make a multimodal one, which is really interesting. You can go ahead and take two modalities, encode them into something small, but joint. It's something small and joint. So a long audio or long sentence and a long video, and then you join. And in such a way that you can recreate both of them, both modalities. If you can train this, and the first one was done on audiovisual digit recognition. So I say a digit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I say it, and I have also the lips of what I say. And then I use that, and then what I say and my lips, they have a joint representation, and I learn it in such a way that I can recreate the audio of the spoken digit and also the lip motion. That was an example of that. There are different ways to train that. But what was the most interesting is now, once I train it, and then I can, what I can do is at test time, I can say, hey, I don't have audio and I only have my video. So you only have my lips. I was just not having any audio, and then it automatically. But so you only see the lip motion, and I encode it. But because I learned 2 decoders from it, I'm able to regenerate the audio and the video from it. Similarly, I could decide that I don't have the audio, and so in that case, I don't have the video, but because I learned it jointly, then I can, at test time, still regenerate the video. This is the example of joint representation, but I told you there's possibility that it is coordinated, that I don't want to smush everything together in one representation. Maybe I want to have audio and video in 2 different representations, but I still want to find, like, there's some moments where they should be coordinated together. And there's a spectrum of approaches for coordinating it. On one extreme, you could put everything equal to each other. So you could say you coordinate it so much that you force this representation to be equal to this one. That's one extreme. That's almost joint representation at that point. And then at the other end is like 2 completely separate representation. That's the other extreme And then there's anywhere in between. One example, which is maybe middle, but a little bit more on the joint side, is called canonical correlation analysis. I don't want to go in all the details, but the idea is that I want to find my two representations in such a way that they are correlated to each other, the most correlated. But just correlation will mean that they're almost equal to each other. But I'm allowing it to be correlated in different ways. There's more than one way these could be correlated. So visual and speech could be correlated because they both have high motion. And like I'm speaking fast and I'm moving fast. That could be one way these are correlated. Or they could be correlated together because their semantic, their meaning are the same. A house, they're both like a house. And so so there's maybe more than one way, and canonical correlation analysis is one way to do that, where it trains it in such a way that you learn your representation, but you learn them in a way that they're correlated to each other, but they're correlated in different orthogonal, what's called canonical projection, like different ways that they can be correlated. And if you take this idea and you merge it with the earlier idea of autoencoder, what is interesting there is that suddenly you have an autoencoder for text, you have an autoencoder for image. There's no joint representation in the middle, but I'm gonna force it in the middle to be somewhat coordinated. And so you can this middle one. And so if you ask me, how do you train this model? Training at the beginning, I will say train first the text and autoencoder and the image like separately. And then as you train them separately and you go iteration by iteration, eventually you're going to start adding more and more of that coordination. And that's the way to train that kind of. And if you're interested in that topic of coordinated, there's also the issue of, there's the interesting paper on autoencoder where the coordination between the two is also an autoencoder. It's really interesting. So I'll let you look at that. The last part of my tutorial is about multimodal alignment. And this, if you remember, the challenge in alignment is how do you synchronize entities like from one modality to another modalities, like how does how is my gesture synchronized with my words? How are objects in the image synchronized with the language, the words? And so example you would like is image captioning example. And I would like today to talk about one type of alignment. I don't have time to talk about all type of alignment, but there's one type of alignment that has been very popular, and it's inspired from human attention. And the concept here is that if I look and I'm one modality, I can only attend at any point in time in a subset of these modalities. And so if I have all these modalities together, at any point in time, I should only attend to a subset, and that subset could be helping me to synchronize or link points with that. So let me be more concrete. But the attention model at a very high level is inspired from human attention. The idea is an example of that in this video of 50+ minutes. You heard a lot of things and you had to remember all of it. You may not remember all of it, but you focus on a few moments. And that focusing on a few moments was decided dynamically. Dynamically, you decided this is a good thing to focus on. And dynamically, you decided this is not a good thing to focus on. And so this intuition, you can use that in the case of multimodal. And to make it a little bit easier to understand, I'm going to use machine translation instead of multimodal, just as an example. In this case, I'm translating the dog on the beach to le chien sur la plage. And you would like to link words, dog with chien and beach with plage. You would like to be able to learn that as you do the translation. And so what you will do is you will encode your first modality. Let's say you're going from French to English, le chien sur la plage. And then when you do the translation, at the time of the translation, the typical translation, what they do is that they encode completely the sentence, the whole sentence, and then they use that whole sentence encoding, and then they go ahead and they decode in the other language. That's the typical machine neural translation. Now, what we will do is that we will not only translate but we will get not a full summary of the full sentence, but at every word that we're translating, we're going to go and look back and say, hey, from all of the words in the French, in the source language, which one is relevant right now? And if it's just at the beginning, I'm just like, okay, it's just probably the first two words. And then I do my first translation, dog. Now that I translated dog, I'm going to look back at all these words and say, okay, which word are relevant? And then I predict the next word and I go ahead. And what's really nice is then things that happen is that you get some nice swap, because in French and English, adjective and nouns are swap. So la zone économique européenne is in English the opposite, the European Economic Area, and that you can see this swap of attention automatically. But in multimodal, you also have these. In multimodal, you also have these type of attention, because if you look at an image and I'm trying to translate it, into words, but I want to translate it into a woman is throwing a frisbee in a park. And then what's really interesting is the AI is in fact attending, like when it's generating the word woman, it attended to both people, but throwing, it's only one of the two. The frisbee is even more tighter, and then the park is in the back. But how do you do this? What do you attend on an image? And the trick to attend on an image is to make a grid. So what they do is take a grid of the image and say, hey, I'm translating, I'm generating words. Okay, where should I attend in the image? And so I go ahead and I say, hey, where should I attend in the image? Okay, this is the place. Let me translate the first word, woman. And then I will go back and look back at the image, and then I will translate my next word, and I will go ahead like this. So this is the idea of attention. You can attend on an image, you can attend on text. Now, if you put all of it in a multimodal, I can attend on all of the modalities. So now you've been listening to me, and at any point in time, you were making a judgment. What should I attend on all of that has been spoken and talked about? And so what you do is you do a local judgment. You do a local judgment of what is useful, but you do that all three modalities at the same time, because you may realize that because I emphasize something, it is probably important, or maybe because what I said, the way I said important. And then you take those local evidence, you fuse them, and then you put them into the memory, and then you accumulate evidences like this. This is an example of a multimodal. And in this case, there's representations that are done in each modality, but then the fusion is done through the concept of attention. And the attention is allowing us to do a little bit of the synchronization, because if this time window is large enough, then a word that I said a few seconds later can have a meaning with the facial expression I said before. And if it's too tight, then it's more of a very local instantaneous fusion. So this is the concept of machine learning, multimodal machine learning. I want to give you an example. I invite you again to look at that survey paper to give you a little bit more. It's a little bit on the older side in the AI world because it's 2 or 3 years old, this paper, but it gives you a nice a nice summary of the 5 challenges in multimodal. The challenge of representation. How do I represent my modalities? The synchrony, the translation, and the co-learning. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want to learn more on this topic, I invite you to go and look more at the lectures and the slides and the reading assignments related to multimodal machine learning. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Alpi. That was a great talk. Excellent. Thank you so much for your patience as well. I apologize for running late a bit. So I will now open the floor for any questions that people may have. You're getting a lot of claps and emotions thrown on the screen, if you notice.
Professor Radhakrishna has question. Arun, can you please bring him onto the stage?
Yeah.
Arun?
Yes.
Arun,
Yes,
are you
I'm
there?
here. Sorry, I'm bringing him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the very nice topic again, and seeing you again, Professor Luis. Actually, in the humans, we have a concept like a learning, relearning, and then de-learning. So how these things will happen in the multimodal AI perspective? Can you throw some light on that?
Yes, thank you. Can you just repeat? I think just my speakers was not working. You said comparing multimodal learning with which kind of learning? Sorry.
No, in humans, generally we have the cognitive learning, like a learning, relearning, and de-learning. Right? So sometimes we'll try to forget also, and then try to again to recollect the things and then learning it. Right? When we go for a multimodality, we have several aspects like a image, video, audio, body gesture, and everything. So if you have this cognitive knowledge along with this generic human behavior, so how to model such elements as part of multimodality AI?
Yeah, if I understood the question, this is really on a new trend in multimodal AI to try to get some knowledge either from cognitive learning or from other related field. I think at this point we're still using a lot of these dense representation in deep learning. When I say dense representation, like words are 300 dimensions, images are 3,000 dimensions. It has an advantage. It can both learn more subtle, probably, aspect of the problem, but it really brings a challenge in mapping this to some more, I would say, classical AI, like reasoning, where you have knowledge and you want to reason about this knowledge. And so for that, I think we are seeing now more and more in AI a renewal of the, for better term, I would still call it classical AI, where we're now starting to kind of discretize knowledge, like knowledge as a set of evidence, and you lose a little bit in that because you cannot get like the very, very fine grain. Or I think what will really be the solution is the hybrid, that you still can get the fine grain from this. But I think you see a move into that. The place which was inspired from cognitive, but I think got too far, is attention. I think attention mechanism that's definitely used in cognition. I think we've overused that term probably in multimodal and in deep learning in general. But I see a nice synergy between the two. I'm also really excited. Maybe one day we can go also the other way. I think that's the dream. Any computer scientist, any kind of computational model that could help us eventually. We have one project looking at intracranial EEG and also seeing how these intracranial EEG could relate to how computers are perceiving emotions. In our case, it's emotions, but in general, perceiving multimodal. I think that's maybe more of a long term. For me, it's almost science fiction, but I really like that area. My knowledge is more on the multimodal AI, but I think I believe in multidisciplinary research. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I know we have made Professor LP wait a bit for us because we are running late on the lecture. So any other questions? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
So who are...
Because I can't see myself. My video is not coming.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah, whoever has question, they can raise their hand or post their question on question box. Maybe while questions coming, Dr. Louis-Philippe, one question from me. I have couple of friends actually. One is school friend, other one is my colleague in IBM. So they have hearing impaired, right? So they do lip lip reading. So is there any multimodal is a pro one and it is working effectively for English? So I know Cisco and some other companies tried hard, but success rate is not very high. Maybe dialects it will not be successful. So I'd like to understand from your experience, is there any model available which is proven already?
Proven already, I don't know if they are. There's some very interesting research that I've seen. There was probably about 6 papers all inventing the same thing at the same time the last year, not this last, but a year and a half ago, which was really interesting. It was now videos. We have a lot of videos on the internet, and a lot of them are in fact captioned. And so you can start looking at lips and try to see motion, like motion of the lips. And because face tracking is working well these days, you can get like really good on those landmarks. Then you start have a decent decent information for the lips. But the main thing is to align. You want to align the lips with the audio signal. That's one way. And you'd like, if possible, to also align the lips to the language. And because you don't want to do it by hand, manually, doing all of this, you would like this to be in some kind of unsupervised or self-supervised way. And that was the beauty of all these 5 or 6 works that came out. They were doing a relatively simpler task at that point. If you have a video with many people talking, who is talking right now? This is like speaker diarization, knowing who is speaking right now. But you could see this kind of technology now that you go and they do it. The problem is always if you know who is talking, you don't need the full subtlety of all the different, what some people call gestemes, like phonemes and audio and gestemes, which is the lips. And so I think we will see more of that as you get better precision for the lip tracking. I think we're really close to that. I've not thought of, I always think of multimodal, but we could see it as a unimodal. And I think personally, the way I see it is you train multimodal, but at the test time, it may be only the lips. And that's we call this co-learning. And I think that's a great example of co-learning. At the end, the test time is going to be just the lips, but you will use that training time knowledge from the language and the acoustics. So I think we're seeing there. The open face that I talk about, it's a software. You can use it for lips. It's not perfect because it was trained in conjunction with the all brows. So all the landmarks are detected jointly. What you want to be sure is you get all the subtlety of the lips. And so I think you could tweak this kind of technology for that.
Okay.
So would that, as a follow-on to that, would it generate the text for display, or would it again create audio from the lip movement?
The mapping that would be easiest will be probably just teams to phonemes. And then after that, you would use probably, and then you could then later on go to the stage of words. But the direct mapping would be more from phonemes to from just team to phonemes. That's probably the clearest one. But then if you have some knowledge of the language, and if you have any extra knowledge you could add to this, even if it's noisy speech recognition or something, maybe you could add to that, yeah.
Just like how we are doing with statistical modeling, you know, obviously generating phoneme again is kind of a moot point if the person can't hear really. So especially if the who is speaking probably may not be an issue in at least in personal conversation situations, where at least we are facing the speaker. So what would be great is that if they can actually read something, with a variable or something as you are speaking, your lips are moving based on the context, and we should be able to statistically predict probably this is what. I mean, while the just teams may suggest a wo or po or whatever, right? So you can do statistical correction to that based on what is happening, and generate the text and display it in a Google Glass or some wearable device. That would be actually an ultimate gadget that people can have to help the humanity a great deal. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one direction I think I didn't discuss it in my talk, but one I'm very passionate about is healthcare. And there, like the motion of your lips and also the way you pronounce phonemes can be a predictor of depression, because depression is often seen as being a reduction, like a psychomotor retardation, which mostly you move less. And that, in fact, was really interesting. It does show in your phonemes, because your phonemes, your a, e, o, like these will be closer to each other, because I don't know, you're maybe moving your mouth a little bit less, you're not stretching as much, so they end up like being closer to each other. So these technology could be used also maybe in healthcare as well.
Absolutely. Your papers on that are fascinating. In fact, I've been following that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? I know it was kind of late in India. We ran late. Mohan or anybody else? Let's see if there are any. Somebody is raising the hand. I think Mohan. Okay. Go ahead, Mohan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are able to hear you. Go ahead. We lost him again. He raised the hand. He was trying to talk, and then we lost him. The challenges of a virtual conference.
Arun, can you please bring
one second.
Dr. Mohan?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, maybe I'm having a question. Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, in one of my earlier work, when I'm doing this like a core learning kind of a thing, mostly from the visual and verbal, vocal and verbal. So working in a banking project. So where the speech was very, very, the kind of a speech when I do the analysis separately, it will be like a very negative sentiment, but the negative emotion kind of things. But when it comes to the text part of it, maybe like he may be talking very politely, but maybe very the tone will be harsh, but he may be politely. So in that cases, how to distinguish between the core learning aspects can happen. because one is going in a positive direction, and but the text will be the corresponding text will be in the negative sentiment side.
And when there is ambiguity in two modalities,
so
basically, how do you disambiguate, or how do you co-learn in that case?
This is a really interesting problem. I think the version of that that's maybe in the same ballpark is like sarcasm as a version, or at least in the same direction. I don't think we are yet having the technology yet for these. Right now, a lot of the technologies suppose that both modalities or three modalities are all going kind of in the same direction. One thing that I like is I saw some work, and we did some on thinking that one modality may be initial, like maybe the backbone of the message, and then the other modality, so like let's say verbal, what you say is the initial, and the non-verbal is there to shift the meaning. So it's kind of shifting, and it can shift it positive or shift it negative. So maybe your tenseness, your posture will shift the meaning to that. And so that was one idea to that we see. But I think to get to the level of sarcasm also, sometimes you need some kind of common sense. You need some kind of knowledge of how things should be. That sarcasm is often very cultural specific. That's one of the issues that we have when we look at sarcasm. It often is because you know the person, you know how they should be behaving and how they end up behaving. So that's another aspect of that. So, but it's a very interesting one. We've not looked at the banking, but I can imagine they need to be polite.
Words are very harsh. Actually, the priority is mainly to identify the dissatisfied customers in a whole conversational database. So they want to identify if they have a large database conversations. So how to identify the dissatisfied customers?
No, that makes sense. And then I was. Cool. And we were talking about the difference of culture. Like, for example, in Japan, if you're talking to your boss, you will be a lot careful, maybe in some aspect to be negative. And so, but you will still express the negative. And so that level of subtlety, I think, is really interesting. So, yeah, thank you.
I think Mohan has a question. Mohan?
Yeah, it reminded me polygraph, actually, with that question.
Yeah, that's the holy grail. That's the holy grail of multimodal. It started in the 90s. We really, really wanted to find a detector that for lie. They're still working on this. So lie detection is still the holy grail.
Sorry.
Hello.
Mohan, you have a question?
Hi, Mohan.
Hello. Thank you so much, Professor Morency. Your talk was really fabulous. I had a lot of questions. And one of the, maybe I'll ask only two questions, and I'll just share it with the preface, a small preface about experiences. Google Maps gets used in India, and if people put it on the vocal mode, we find American voices trying to pronounce and give directions to the Indians in the Indian context, and there's a lot of gap there. I find a lot of Indian students and Indians out in the US and perhaps in Europe who struggle to fit into the local cultural landscape and mumble along, right? Now, in both cases, building upon what my earlier, the earlier question was from my colleague, Radha Krishna, is there a set of cultural clusters of modalities that have been investigated which tries to capture these nuances of implicit assumptions on how human beings interact? And why is this not coming out? Of course, I can also share there's a Western bias that whatever comes out first is the universal, the American universal exceptionalism kind of comes out implicit. So how does one handle it? Because I find this a very difficult problem.
Yeah, this is one of the understudied And I think we need a lot more work there. And one thing to share also, and I think this is true in India, maybe even more, but also in the US, is like even in the US, you do see an effect like African American may have almost their own dialect or own nonverbal and way of pronouncing and even speaking. And that's part of their culture. That's part of and often maybe the teachers will ask them or force a certain type of discussion or way of speaking or behaving. And I think this is something that has been identified, something that quite a few professors and researchers are working on, but I don't think we have yet the answer. And that becomes even more important when you start building technology, because yes, maybe the easy thing to start is to go with the most popular, well, let's say, way of talking in that locality. But that if we could adapt, and that can be adapting with the like speech recognition and speech generation. I'm interested also adapting the nonverbal, because I also think the nonverbal will be important. Your way of intonation, your way of gesturing. A lot of these is that a lot of deep learning needs so much data to be trained, and they work well when you have a lot of data. I think the recent trend in multimodal AI and in AI also is really about learning from limited resources, because a lot of time we should be able to adapt with just a limited resource. Now, I will never call India is definitely not a limited resources, but what I will see is like within any country there are often other dialect, and then so you want to be representing all of them, and you should be able to adapt if the user wants to. I mean, we should not do that without the user consent, but that I think is really interesting. I think one of the building block is to be able to adapt the system with limited resources, limited annotation on this. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
The earlier question was also, there is from another girl that asked the same question about detection of the sarcasm and other elements. I think, Mohan, to answer that question, there is a lot of emotion detection aspects that are there, where there are cultural filters applied based on how you express in different cultures. I think W3C has done some good work on that. I can probably share some articles with you on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Were there two questions? Sorry, I know I answered one.
Yeah. There is another, I mean, same question, but differently. One student from Ministry of Science, Preshi Agarwal, asked whether you have any suggestions for how to detect sarcasm in speech or using multimodal techniques.
Yeah, and I think here's my personal intuition is that I think there will be maybe, I don't know, 20% to 30% of the cases where we can detect sarcasm without any context, without any knowledge on that person. But I think in the majority of the case, the sarcasm and just a real sentence is very close to each other. So I think the approach I will take is almost a speaker adaptation. Like, first learn how the speaker is talking and behaving, and then when you got that baseline, then you will be able to look at the sarcasm. So that's the one part of the answer. The other one is that you need often to have either common sense or knowledge about the culture, because sometimes the sarcasm is expressed in a way that require you to know that in this culture We never do. We never hold the phone this way, and so doing it another way is really unusual. And so there's a lot of really interesting knowledge that needs to be kind of known by the computer, and it needs to be able to adapt. I think these are two building blocks. And so for me in multimodal, we talk about lie detection as maybe a holy grail, which I don't know if we will ever attempt, but sarcasm seems more feasible.
There's a lot of data available for you.
The data is always, I mean, that would be, sorry, that will be answer number one, which probably I should have thought that. We need more data. And I think Raj is completely right on that. But I will say from a modeling perspective, we will need to be able to integrate a lot like prior knowledge about the culture, about the person, and being able to adapt. And these are things you need in many other tasks. So I will say sarcasm, you could put it like, by the time we solve sarcasm, we would have solved a lot of other multimodal problems. That's kind of the way I see it.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, excellent. Any other questions? I know we are running out of time because we made.
So I have a short question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you say then that this multimodal machine learning would be much more successful if applied to closed or rather tight groups of people communicating with each other, and therefore the understanding and interpretation as well as actions that come out of it is much more successful than to make it universal?
I believe in targeted conversations. I think an example which we just discussed a little bit earlier was clinical interviews in healthcare. I think in this kind of situation, the type of topics that will be discussed will come again. The type of behaviors and so I believe in these more control setting as a start. I think it's healthy to go at the same time. You have those cultural settings, and I believe in that because you can better understand the context of the interaction. You know what has maybe been asked before, so that allows you to look at the response and of the patient more clearly. And then if you are more unconstrained, I think the big challenge is any nonverbal behavior you will observe, you may be able to know the person's smile, but the intent or the emotion behind it, you will need the context. And so any kind of uncontrolled, you need to do two things at the same time. Not only perceive the behaviors, but also and not only, sorry, the first one, perceive the behavior and know their intent and emotion behind it, but you need to also being able to formalize the context of these behaviors. And these like twofold, going like chicken and an egg. If I knew the context, I will know the behavior. If I know the behavior, I may be able to later on have a better context. That's a challenge. Any kind of uncertainty in one could have an impact on the other. In more controlled, then usually you have knowledge, the kind of interaction, is there a structure in the interaction or the type of vocabulary, and that I think is helpful very much. And I believe in controlled environment. We learn a lot from that, but I also like those unconstrained just because there may be problems we've not thought of, and if we wait too long to get in those unconstrained, we may just then have to almost restart everything that we learned. I don't think it will be the case. I think there will be the knowledge that we can switch to the unconstrained, but I think it's healthy to do both. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And on that note, I think let's congratulate. Thanks so much, LP. Greatly appreciate. And also, I just want to plug in something here. If those of you that are interested in multimodal research, there is going to be an ACM conference, ICMI in 2022, that will be hosted in Bangalore. So we are very happy to bring that to Bangalore, India, first time ever. So most of you can direct research towards that and publish papers there also. Thank you so much.
I really hope that we can do that in person. But thank you very much for the invitation. And if you have follow-up questions, feel free to email me. And the link to the class the course. All the lectures are there, so there's I don't know.
We're going to post that on the conference site also. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. So with that, we are concluding the evening session, and see you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Sridhar.